As you might already know, Ireland's economy depends heavily on big American multinationals, especially in the tech and pharmaceutical sectors, who've set up shop in the small European economy to minimise their tax rates, which has long inflated Irish GDP and filled government coffers. However, the Irish model now looks in serious jeopardy after Trump imposed unprecedented tariffs on pharmaceutical exports to the US as part of the recent US-EU trade deal, before announcing on Tuesday that he planned to impose additional so-called Section 232 tariffs on all pharmaceutical imports, which Trump claims will rise to 150% within 18 months and eventually to a staggering 250%. So in this video, we're going to have a look at why Trump's tariffs are jeopardising Ireland's economy, and what could happen next. Could you rank every single politician in the world? Hear our thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. Let's start with some context. While Ireland is now seen as a wealthy nation, that hasn't always been the case. For much of the 19th and early 20th centuries, the country was marked by mass emigration, deindustrialisation under British rule, and an increasingly protectionist economic policy, which meant Ireland was among the poorest countries in Western Europe. In the mid-20th century, badly affected by the oil crisis, industrial strikes and political crisis, economic growth in Ireland stagnated. In the early 1980s, Ireland became known as the sick man of Europe, with a GDP per capita roughly a third lower than that of the UK or France. It was only really in the 90s when Ireland began converging towards its European neighbours. From 1995 to 2000, Ireland's growth averaged 9.4%, and in 2001 it achieved the highest GDP per capita in Western Europe, earning it the nickname the Celtic Tiger. While there have been some occasional hiccups, Ireland's rapid growth has basically continued, helped by its membership of the EU. Now, the main reason for Ireland's freakishly rapid GDP growth is its pro-business policies. In short, Ireland's open economy, functioning legal system, and perhaps most importantly, super low corporation tax rate of 12.5% have made it the tax haven of choice for Western multinationals, especially in the IT and pharmaceutical sectors. To take advantage of Ireland's low corporation tax rate, many multinational companies claim that most of their business takes the form of exports from their Irish subsidiaries. The precise mechanism is a bit complicated, but the basic idea is that when, say, Apple sells an iPhone, it claims that most of the value comes from research and development operations in Ireland. In other words, despite the fact that an iPhone is designed in California and built in China, when you buy one, most of the money goes to Apple's Irish subsidiary. In pharmaceuticals, major US drug companies like Pfizer actually manufacture drugs in Ireland. Those drugs are then exported globally, including back to the US, where the American parent company purchases them from its Irish subsidiary, and the profit is booked and taxed at 12.5% in Ireland instead of 21% in the US. This investment from US pharmaceutical and tech multinationals has been the cornerstone of Ireland's recent economic success. These companies haven't just created tens of thousands of jobs. About 15% of the Irish workforce work directly or indirectly for US companies. They've transformed entire towns and cities. Dublin has become a major hub for US tech giants, while pharmaceutical manufacturing is spread across the country, with Cork in particular being a key cluster. Meanwhile, corporation tax receipts have surged from €10 billion in 2019 to €28.1 billion in 2024. In fact, a 2022 report by the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council revealed that just 10 companies were responsible for 60% of Ireland's corporate tax revenue, with 3 of them accounting for 1/3. That level of concentration has helped deliver record budget surpluses, projected to hit €8.6 billion this year, but also poses risks if those companies pull back. What's more, American politicians aren't entirely comfortable with this state of affairs, and it's something Trump has occasionally expressed irritation about. In his first term, for instance, Trump and his team sometimes framed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which slashed the US corporation tax rate from 35% to 21%, as a way to discourage American companies from shifting profits to low-tax jurisdictions like Ireland. Now, with Trump ramping up his trade war, Ireland is once again in the spotlight. The country currently runs a goods trade surplus of over €50 billion, with the US, and as of last year, behind only China, Mexico and Vietnam, and ahead of both Germany and Japan. A large portion of that imbalance is driven by Irish pharmaceutical exports, which account for around 60% of Ireland's total exports to the US. Many of the exporting companies are American-owned, and earlier this year, Trump claimed tax revenues rightfully owed to the US Treasury were being siphoned off, and accused Ireland of, quote, taking pharmaceutical companies. Other figures in Trump's administration have echoed this sentiment. The US Commerce Secretary called Ireland his favourite tax scam, one he looked forward to, quote, fixing, and argued that it's nonsense that Ireland, of all places, runs a trade surplus at our expense. Then last week, the US and EU reached a trade deal which imposed 15% tariffs on most EU exports, and for the first time, pharmaceutical products were on the list. While Trump has long vowed to bring drug manufacturing back to America, industrial leaders and the powerful pharmaceutical lobby in Washington have been very successful in lobbying against pharmaceutical tariffs, arguing they could cause drug shortages and limit access to critical medicines. Anyway, while the European Commission has insisted that tariffs will not exceed 15% for pharmaceuticals, the US is still conducting Section 232 investigations into pharmaceutical and semiconductor imports. And on Tuesday, Trump told CNBC that while he would start with a small pharma tariff, he intends to raise it to 150% within 18 months, and eventually to 250%. If Trump follows through, this could be terrible news for the Irish economy and Treasury. While the cost of relocation for pharmaceutical or tech companies makes a full-scale relocation unlikely, with a survey by the American Chamber of Commerce showing that over 2/3 of US companies in Ireland plan to keep investing over the next 5 years, even a modest slowdown or tax restructuring could have an outsized impact on Ireland's economy. In fact, Ireland's economy contracted during the last quarter for the first time since 2023, driven by a decrease in the multinational-dominated sector of industry. If Trump did actually impose, say, a 250% tariff on pharma imports into the US, that might actually force pharma companies to relocate. As former Taoiseach Simon Harris warned last year, the country could lose up to €10 billion in corporation tax revenue if just 3 major US firms repatriated their profits. Now, of course, with large budget surpluses and a strong fiscal position, Ireland has a financial cushion to weather any short-term shocks. But there's also a more difficult structural problem for Ireland here. Namely that, as American politicians on both sides of the political aisle look to reshore certain strategic industries, Ireland's economic model will come under increasing pressure. Everything we've discussed in today's video plays into a broader sense of uncertainty in the world at the moment. And who's so often in the middle of all that? Well, the United States. So in the next issue of our magazine Too Long, we're discussing this geopolitical shift and whether we're currently observing the end of the American order. In that section, we discuss everything from the collapse of democratic norms in the US to the decline in American soft power, to issues with the US economy or the battle for universities, before discussing who could potentially take over in a post-America world. So if you want to find out what we really think, now's your chance. It's not just the US though. This issue is our longest ever at 78 pages, full of our very best journalism and analysis. So we also get into why Germany's military might is growing, if Farage could become the UK's Prime Minister, why countries are outsourcing their migrants, why the global order is collapsing with Professor James Kerr-Lindsay, and why leaders like Putin and Netanyahu seem to be getting away with it. The magazine has now been officially published, so if you order a copy today, we'll ship it to you as soon as we can. Or if you select the digital edition, we'll send a digital version of Too Long straight to your inbox. Plus, if you want the best deal, make sure that you subscribe to Too Long. That way, not only do you get every issue going forward, you'll also get 20% off every copy as long as you're a member. On top of that, this week only, if you use code LASTCHANCE20, you'll get an additional 20% off this copy, bringing down the cost from £9.99 to £6.40 for a digital edition, or £13.99 to £8.96 for a physical edition. This really is your last chance too. From next week, all new subscribers won't receive this issue of Too Long, instead having to wait until December's The New Middle East issue. So if you want the reduced subscriber pricing on this issue, this really is your last chance. As we outlined in our recent video on TLDR's finances, TLDR actually made a loss last year, and Too Long is a big part of our plan to make TLDR profitable in 2025 to continue funding the free videos we release every day. So if you want to be part of that, then head to toolong.news and subscribe today. We really appreciate your support.